Okay, we come to Plato's Academy, and of course in the center here we have Plato, finger going up, as above, Aristotle, so below. Here's Euclid, and he's making his geometric drawings. The trouble is, for Euclid, that mathematicians missed what he was really actually trying to do. Over here is Pythagoras, Empedocles, and here is the famous Hypatia that I spoke about, Hypatia of Alexandria and Euclid and other mathematicians of Alexandria. Blavatsky says that Pythagoras, Plato, Euclid, and Archimedes were initiates of the ancient wisdom. Archimedes also studied with the followers of Euclid in Alexandria, and I just came from Sicily where I gave a talk on Archimedes. There's a method, a logical method that they covered up. They would not reveal it. There are two things that were forbidden to reveal. Number one, golden section. Number two, how you arrive at the solution. It's called abduction. It was rediscovered by Charles Sanders Peirce, the mathematician, founded in Aristotle's writings, what they did in the Academy. What Plato did is he would present the anomaly to the members of the Academy, and they would abduct the solution. I think in our previous talk, I think I got into it a little bit, coming up out of Plato's Cave into the light. It's a dialectical ascent. Here you can see that I'm talking about Euclid at the mini-symposium on dark energy. Euclid, founder of the Alexandrian School of Mathematics and known as the father of geometry, flourished around 300 BCE during the reign of Ptolemy Soter, who basically laid the foundations of the Alexandrian Library and Museum. Most importantly, Proclus, one of the Neoplatonic interpreters, asserted that in what actually Stakov is called the Proclus hypothesis, that Euclid wrote his elements primarily in order to give a systematic theory of the construction of the five Platonic solids, demonstrating their proportional relationships centered on the golden ratio. And there are some other logoses, or logoi, plural for logos, root 2, root 3, root 5, in the final book 13. The purpose behind it was to demonstrate the proportional harmonies reflected in the mathematics of nature and the cosmos. This underlying Pythagorean harmony of the elements was missed by modern scholars and teachers of mathematics. It's really unfortunate. And instead, they laid the emphasis on what they thought was the key, the axiomatic approach to geometry. That is important. But the real key is that this is laying out how nature actually works. And in book 13, guess what? If you look, people don't read. Just like people talk about the Bible, they never read it. They talk about Euclid, they never read it. Book 13. Propositions focus on golden sectioning of a line, called dividing a line in extreme and mean ratio. So anytime you see this DEMR, that's division in extreme and mean ratio, it's a golden cut. So look at these propositions, what you start with. If a straight line be cut in the golden cut. Golden cut. Number 3, golden cut, golden cut, golden cut, golden cut. If three angles of an equilateral pentagon, you'll see in a moment why pentagon is so significant with its pentagrams, etc. Let's just keep going. Cut one another at extreme and mean ratio. You see it. I don't have to go over it again and again and again. And by the way, some of this you're going to see like this. Construct an icosahedron and comprehend it in a sphere, dodecahedron in a sphere. How many of you are theosophical in background or have, okay? T sub a rho. You'll find a paper by T sub a rho on this particular subject. This is crucial. And anytime you do this, it's all golden ratios. And then 18, eventually what you do is you set out the sides of the 5 figures and compare them with one another. What you're doing is you're figuring out the ratios of nature itself. It's not just golden ratio, root 2, root 3, root 5. These things are resonance ratios. Everything is vibrations, everything is resonance. The way we move into higher states of consciousness is we go into resonance. I have a guitar here. I pluck a string. There's a guitar in the corner. Who's the guy in town? We couldn't get the hotels? Bobby? I don't know if he uses a guitar or not. But the guitar in the corner will resonate. It'll go into entrainment with it. It'll pick up the same note that I'm strumming here. We are tuning forks. Those microtubules, we're hardwired for this, to go into resonance with higher beings, higher states of consciousness, and that's the re-identification. Ted Capstick is going to talk about identification tomorrow and initiation. And so Buddha, Siddhartha sits under the bodhi tree. He goes into quantum coherence, lockstep, not just with all of humanity, not just with the earth, not just with the solar system, certainly the galaxy, perhaps the entire universe, because we're set up for cosmic consciousness. That's the goal, is samadhi. That's what we're all about. And this is all described in Alexei Stakov's The Mathematics of Harmony. Now, this is a very expensive book, but I think theosophical lodges and schools should have this. From Euclid to contemporary mathematics and computer science, probably costs about $140. So it's not like my little book, which is a little cheapo. And I assisted him. It's really his work, but I did assist him. This, by the way, is Luca Pacioli, the monk drunk on beauty. He wrote Divina Proportione in 1509. It was illustrated by Leonardo da Vinci. This we used to think is da Vinci, but we now think it's probably Albrecht Dürer, who came from Germany to study with Pacioli and learn this great secret and the secrets of perspective. There you'll see a little dodecahedron. There's one of the semi-regular Archimedean solids. I gave this talk, or not this talk, I gave a talk in Odessa, and we had to translate it into Russian. So that's why you'll see a little bit of Russian. Only a couple of slides in here are related to that. But here's what Stakov has to say. In particular, his work on Fibonacci computers, algorithmic measurement theory, encryption, and coding theory, applications in quantum physics, biology, and aesthetics theory is leading the way for the development of a new interdisciplinary golden paradigm for modern science and education. So we go back to ancient Greece, and here we have Pythagoras, and you see here's the 5 Platonic solids. There's a tetrahedron, 4 equilateral triangles, that's fire. The cube represented, for Plato, represented earth. You see the square faces. Again, equilateral triangles in the octahedron, air. Icosahedron, 20 equilateral triangles, that's water. And then the dodecahedron, which was reserved for the structure of the cosmos itself. And from Philolaus, one of the Pythagoreans, Plato learned, and by the way, Plato, Blavatsky says Plato is the world's interpreter. Not one of them, he is it. In fact, the Mahatmas say in the Mahatma letters that he is a 5th rounder. He's coming, we're in the 4th round. They're coming, some of these arhats, adepts, are coming from the future into the presence to help teach us. And all things that can be known contain number. Without this, nothing can be thought or known. One of my teachers in sacred geometry was Keith Critchlow. Time Stands Still, New Light on Megalithic Science. Wonderful genius, Bucky Fuller's kind of right-hand man. Here's what he says, and we'll see these again and again. These 3 special ratios, root 3, root 2, and the golden mean, are directly related to the triangle, square, and pentagon. They recur consistently throughout the proportioning of the great sacred buildings of mankind. Interestingly enough, in Scotland and in a place called Aberdeen and other areas, we have found these stones. Some of them were in the Ashmolean Museum, sitting in a drawer. Someone could have easily stolen them. These are some of the great artifacts of humanity. These are Neolithic. They are already carving the stones into the shapes of the Platonic and, in some cases, Archimedean solids. In other words, there was wisdom on the planet. There's ancient wisdom. And, I mean, my God, we're only catching up. They were more advanced than we are. The Nebra Sky Disk. Howard Crowhurst is the expert on the Karnak stone alignments in Karnak, France. There's Karnak, Egypt, Karnak, France. And there's this Nebra Sky Disk. This is a very special volume right here. And what they can do with that disk, we can't get into that now, I'm just mentioning it. The Antikythera. This is a reproduction of a device that they found that on a ship that went down in the Aegean Sea around 300 BCE. And because they have X-rayed it and used other sophisticated techniques of analysis, they can reconstruct it. There are over 30 gears. Scientists still cannot fully understand it. It probably shows you exactly where you are on the Earth. It's clear that the ancients not only knew that the Earth was a sphere or spherical, they knew its size, and they had mapped it out quite well. So if something got lost, now whether that's Atlantis or not, I'm not here to say that that is the case. However, if there was a civilization that bit the dust because of technological development, realize that right now we're on the precipice of another Atlantis, unfortunately. I'm not a fearmonger, but hopefully our ethics and our interfaith work draws us together before we blow each other up. Here is a most sophisticated joining together in this geared mechanism of Maya geared clockwork. And this is a working scale model, and you'll see Venus, the Hob calendar, their 365-day, Mars synodic eclipse calendar, Zolkian, which was their 260-day, it's really a gestation period calendar, the 13 moons, Saturn, Jupiter, and then the 8-19-day cycle. All of this stuff is linked together. I'm pretty convinced they're probably going to find that in the Antikythera. And this gentleman here, Garth Norman, is Zappa Sacred Space, Sculpture Calendar Codex. I'm just showing you a few books too as we go. Absolute genius. And then Jay Kennedy, here at the University of Manchester, I believe, who discovered the musical structure in Plato's Dialogues. They were on scrolls. And he has figured out, through counting and figuring out the numbers, that in fact what Plato did, because it was absolutely forbidden, he was in essence, what they were doing is they were replacing the Olympian gods with the numbers that they actually represent. But that was, again, forbidden to reveal it, and in the Pythagorean scale. So what happens in the dialogues, where you find notes, intervals, musical intervals that would be consonant, harmonic. They'll refer to golden means or the essence of it or the middle of something or harmony or beauty or doing good things. Where the dissonances are, all the bad stuff, the war, the evil things that people do to one another. Plato coded it all, and how he did this, I mean, what a genius. What I did was I figured out the secret of his divided line. But I did find in these later reports that ultimately, and you know who he's talking about there, other scholars have identified the divided line as an allusion, not illusion, allusion to the golden mean, and have various strong arguments for that. Surprisingly, the divided line passage is at a location that corresponds to the value of the golden cut, and the cave is there as well. It's the secret doctrine of Plato. Surprisingly, the Parmenides also has a passage at 61.8% with specific similarities to Euclid's language of the golden mean. Other dialogues discuss means and middles near that point. The conclusion from all this is that it is now more probable, thank heavens the guy finally realized this, that Plato's divided line is a deliberate and deliberately vague allusion to the golden mean. So we have Plato's cave, the prisoners are watching the shadows on the wall, and one of them is released. Most of you probably know the cave simile or allegory. How should I do it? How many of you know the allegory of coming up out of the cave into the light, ascending? Okay, some of you don't, which is fine. And one of them turns around and realizes, oh my God, these are not real. The prisoners think this is the reality, just like you and I think this outer observable world is the really real. And one of them looks around and realizes not only are these reflections, shadows of, for example, a cat here, but even the cat is simply a cardboard cutout or a statue, etc. So there's something more real. There's a roadway up and out. This is the actual cave that we think, my friends and I think, is the basis of Plato's cave. And I went deep into it. Flashlight went out. It was very dangerous, by the way. But we got the flashlight going again, thank heavens, and then we're on our way out now. And this was the original Apollo's temple, before the temple was built. This is where the shepherd went in, got the fumes, went into an altered state of consciousness. We're coming up to the surface. And here it is with the Pythagoreans, the hymn to the rising sun. And what they're discovering in their states of illumination as they proceed up, abduct actually upwards, you move up ultimately to the one or the good, and then you discover what's called the indefinite dyad that I'll have more to say about. But the sun represents that. And here you have the golden cut. By the way, if the feet are here, that's the top of the head, that's where the navel is. It's at the golden cut. I've measured students for, I'll underestimate, 27 years. And all I do, take their shoes off, I get their height, I find out where the navel is. What we find is they're Fibonacci approximations to the golden ratio. They're like plants and animals. It's how nature works, through whole numbers. And some actually hit it on the head in terms of the golden cut. The best demonstration of the golden section is probably in an animated film that was nominated for an Academy Award back in 1957. It's called Donald Duck in Mathmagicland. So my college students, one of the first things they get is they get to see this, and then they think it's a big joke, and then they realize, oh my God, what is going on here? Because they go back and they visit Pythagoras and notice a little pentagram up there and the lyre with the notes, etc. So when I was a student at the University of Minnesota, I was getting into Platonic aesthetics. I did my Summa thesis on it. We don't have any writings from Michelangelo, but we certainly can analyze what he did. This is from Hupka. And you see immediately that there's certain things going on that Michelangelo was doing to get the beauty, for example, in the Pieta here. Plato's occult doctrine, the same time I'm working on his ontology, what exists, or metaphysics, and his epistemology. Ontology, people again, they get upset because they don't understand the word. Ontos is what exists, existence. So ontology is the study of what exists. And every philosopher has some kind of ontology. Epistemology, from the Greek word episteme, means knowledge. So it's the theory of knowledge. So I was looking at his secret underlying doctrine. Here's how the thing works. The whole line is to the upper line here in the same ratio as it is to the lower line. These are all golden sections. The world of forms is to the world of mathematics in the same ratio as everyday objects, you and I, trees, horses, are to our artifacts, the things we produce. However, when you're seated in the cave and you're unaware of this, you're watching the shadows on the wall. There's all kinds of deception that occurs in the world. Politicians, attorneys, everybody is kind of deceiving us, advertising, television, all this stuff. But when you become enlightened, the whole idea is to come back down into the cave. But usually people who do that, the people who have their kind of fixed narrowness, blinders on, they can't handle it, so you kill Socrates, you do in Jesus, you get Pythagoras. And again, the history shows us that these people are unwanted because they shake the system up. The great mystery was, what were the greater and the lesser of the indefinite dyad? Plato had two principles, the one and the indefinite dyad of the greater and the lesser, but that could not be revealed because that's, as it turns out, the golden ratio, and it's reciprocal, as we'll see. This was the paper where I revealed it in the Nexus Network Journal of Architecture and Mathematics back in 2002, the indefinite dyad and golden section uncovering Plato's second principle. I've had not had a single philosopher, nobody has challenged me on this. The reason is we nail it in there. There's no question about it. Now, what Plato also does in the Timaeus is he gives us two triangles that he says are used to build up the cosmos. And you see here it's the halving of a square, which was the surface of a cube, and the surface of the tetrahedron, octahedron, and icosahedron, or equilateral triangles bisected. So you get this little triangle, you get root 3. We know from both him and his nephew, Speusippus, who took over the academy after he left, that there behind the scenes is the one. Actually, Plato mentions this in the Timaeus. This represents 1, this is 2, this is 3, and remember, the Pythagoreans swore by the tetractys. 1, 2, 3, 4. The Timaeus begins with the statement 1, 2, 3, but where is the 4th, my dear Timaeus, of those who were here yesterday? One of them has become ill, but this is Plato's way of hinting at things. So you get the root 2, root 3 to build the cosmos up, but look what he says. He's always hinting for those who are alert. These then we assume to be the original elements of fire and other bodies, but the principles which are prior to these, deity only knows, and he of men who is a friend of deity. Anyone who can point out a more beautiful form than ours for the construction of these bodies shall carry off the palm. Not as an enemy, but as a friend. He who disproves what we are saying and shows that we are mistaken may claim a friendly victory. That's because he's left out the construction of the Decahedron, which requires the pentagon, which requires the golden section. This is how I speeded this up. Usually I take a little time with it. You construct a golden rectangle. There's a way that you do a compass move here. This becomes the square root of the golden section. For those who are really into it, drop it down here, drop down the golden ratio here, the greater. This is the lesser right here, and then you form these triangles, right-angled triangles. This becomes exactly root 3. This is exactly root 2. In other words, out of the womb of the golden ratio come the root 2, root 3, the other roots, and you see how you construct. This is the squares in the world. Here are your equilateral triangles. This is a Vesica Pisces, by the way. I know some of this is floating over some of your heads, but don't worry about it. You're going to get it. Greater, lesser, square root of the greater, 1/2 of root 2, root 3. There it is. I found a simple drawing that has blown them away. Now, I'm not, what should I say, revealing something, well, I am revealing, but I'm merely rediscovering what the ancients knew, but it was forbidden to talk about. And this should really be telling for you. The Overtone Series and its relation to Greek gematria. Some of you are into the names of the gods. They encoded into the names of the gods the secrets of the geometry. These are all functions of square root of 2, and you'll see the names Hermes, you'll see Apollo, and the lyre. And think about who Hermes is and who Apollo is. They're brothers. The one Hermes gives the lyre, the stringed instrument, to his brother Apollo. Apollo gives the caduceus to Hermes, the wand of the mysteries. It's all reciprocity, and it's resonance. It's all harmonies. So you look at the names here. Here's the fundamental here, unity, 1/8 of root 2. And then Hermes becomes 2/8 of root 2. And the lyre is 3/8 of root 2. The god Hermes is 707, is 1/2 of root 2. Root 2, when you calculate it, it turns out to be 1.414, and then etc. What these people did is they would multiply that times 1,000, then they'd take the name, and you could be 1 plus or 1 minus. They'd allow just enough flexibility so you could get it going. So Hermes here at 707 is 1/2 root 2. Apollo by itself is 3/4 of root 2. The god, he tome Apollon, is root 2 right on the button. And then you go up and you get 9/8 root 2, 10/8 or 5/4 root 2 up here with these names. All linked to the overtone system. This is after, it's a development after David Feidler, Jesus Christ, Son of God. An excellent book put out by the Theosophical Society in America with Quest Books. And Son is spelled S-U-N. Yes?
Yes. So it's not the English, it's the Greek.
Yeah, this is simply translated. Yeah, this would be Apollon, he tome Hermes, but it would be Greek, yes. But they did the same thing with the names Christ. Guess what? Christ, Christos, and Jesus. Christos, you'll see in my book, 1480. Jesus, a very important number, 888. You divide 1480 by 888. If you got a calculator, do it. It's exactly the equivalent of 5/3. 5 is to 3. So Christ becomes in golden ratio relationship to the man, Jesus. The Atman relative to the man. Okay, enough said. Okay, here's the key. Unity, the one, here's the greater. I use a capital letter in Greek, phi. You see the number we've been talking about. Here's the lesser, it's reciprocal. Obviously, if you multiply something times its reciprocal, you get 1, but this is the only number. You subtract these two, guess what you get? There are two irrational numbers, you subtract them, you come back to unity. This is the original, this is the real McCoy Trinity right here. This was taught by the Neoplatonists, something Peter doesn't know. This was taught by the Neoplatonists to the Christians. And here's Luca Pacioli, we've already seen him, the monk drunk on beauty with Dürer behind him. Here's illustrations for his book. So here's your true Da Vinci Code. Dodecahedron. And when you have a dodecahedron, look what happens. If you go to the center point and go to the opposite center point of the faces and connect them, unity or 1, go across to the other side, it's exactly big phi. It's 1.61800339. Actually, I got a better image, I think, coming up. I'll show you the icosahedron. There we go. Icosahedron, you take the vertices, connect them, that's 1. That's the golden ratio right there. The scaffolding of nature is constructed upon the primordial scission. The whole universe is fractalized and has the golden ratio resonant within it. And so here's the suggestion. It actually came from an article in Nature reported in Science News in 2003. The shape of the space cosmologists glimpse signs that the universe is unbounded? I don't want you to think I'm pulling your leg. Look what it says. Latest proposal of the dodecahedral nature of the universe is inferred, abducted from the anomalous findings of the second and third harmonics of the cosmic microwave background radiation being weaker than expected. Just like they found that the expansion of the universe is speeding up, and they didn't expect that. But now we know why, and it all has to do with the golden ratio. Here's Kepler nesting the solids and getting the orbits of the planets. Now people think that maybe when he discovered that there's elliptical orbits that he gave this up. He sure as heck did not. And what Martineau, John Martineau, another fellow countryman of yours, who's the editor of all the wooden books and the editor of my book and the designer of it, took a computer, averaged out the orbits and took the mean diameter of the Earth and the other planets, and guess what? Root 2, root 3, golden mean, incredible stuff. And here's what Kepler said. Geometry has two great treasures. One is the theorem of Pythagoras, the other the division of a line into extreme and mean ratio, the golden section. First, I'm not going to tell you, just use your own noggin. The first we may compare to a measure of gold. The second we may name a precious jewel. Jewels are stones. Okay, in Italy, in Syracuse, on the island of Ortegia, I gave a talk on Archimedes and the 13 semi-regular solids. Only difference between these and the regular solids, they all fit perfectly within a sphere, is that you have more than one type of face on it. So here you have now hexagons, and here you have equilateral triangles. So you have squares, equilateral triangles. Anytime you have a hexagon, like the hexagram, the star of theosophy, you have root 3. Anytime you have octagons, 8-sided figures, you have root 2, octagons. Yes. And anytime you have decagons, you have still golden mean. So the same resonance that's coming through the Platonic solids are coming through the Archimedean. And what's happening is science is now discovering at various levels that these are giving us the keys to the structure of nanotechnology. And here it is, the truncated icosahedron, where you cut the corners of the icosahedron. I don't know if I mentioned to you that the reason that HIV is so difficult to deal with is that it has all the golden ratios in it. Nature just uses it. And it's an icosahedron, but you'll see that they treat it with cages, with medicines, the cages that are used using the truncated icosahedron. Archimedes is carrying through an ontological key of harmonic ratios, nature's fractals, the ones I've been speaking about. He also carries through an epistemological key that I don't have time to really talk about in this lecture. It's called abductive inference. It's the logic of discovery. It's the stuff that got covered up, but because we found a palimpsest that had been written over by forgers, and they now can decipher it, we know a little bit about his method, and it's real close to what I've been telling you about.